Imagine a land where the desert sands stretch endlessly, glowing gold under the unrelenting sun, while a river of life, the Nile, winds its way through the heart of the land, bringing fertility to the soil and life to the people. This is ancient Egypt, a civilization whose story spans thousands of years and whose mysteries continue to captivate the world today. The Nile River, over 4,000 miles long, was more than just a river. It was the lifeblood of Egypt. Its predictable annual flooding deposited nutrient-rich silt along its banks, creating fertile land in an otherwise harsh desert. The people called it the gift of the Nile, and it was a cornerstone of everything: their food, transport, religion, and even their understanding of time. The cycles of the Nile guided planting and harvest, shaping the rhythms of daily life, trade, and governance. Geographically, Egypt was divided into Upper Egypt in the south and Lower Egypt in the north. The land itself influenced the civilization. Deserts to the east and west acted as natural barriers against invasion, while the Nile Valley provided a corridor of safety and connection. This unique geography allowed Egyptian culture to flourish relatively undisturbed for centuries. The origins of this remarkable civilization trace back to around 3100 BCE, when Upper and Lower Egypt were unified under a single ruler, believed to be King Narmer, also known as Menes. This unification marked the dawn of the early dynastic period, a time when the foundations of pharaonic culture were established. Religion, kingship, and a complex system of government began to take shape, setting the stage for one of the most iconic civilizations in human history. From the very beginning, the Egyptians viewed their pharaohs as divine. The pharaoh was not just a king, but a living god, a mediator between the gods and the people. This belief shaped every aspect of society, from monumental architecture to the rituals performed in the temples. Temples were not merely places of worship. They were the center of economic and political power, storing grain, gold, and precious goods, and serving as hubs of administration and learning. Even in these earliest days, the Egyptians were masterful architects, engineers, and artists. They developed the first forms of hieroglyphic writing, using pictorial symbols to record everything from royal decrees to religious texts. The importance of writing cannot be overstated. It allowed knowledge to be preserved across generations, linking the distant past to the future in ways few ancient civilizations could achieve. Beyond the political and religious structures, daily life in ancient Egypt was intimately connected to the land. Farmers worked tirelessly along the Nile, tending wheat, barley, flax, and vegetables. They relied on a careful understanding of seasons, the stars, and the river's rhythms. Fishermen cast their nets, while craftsmen shaped wood, stone, and metals into tools, ornaments, and art. The Nile was a highway, carrying goods, ideas, and people, connecting villages, towns, and the great cities that would emerge over time. Even the concept of time was bound to the Nile. The Egyptians observed the stars, the sun, and the river's floods to create one of the earliest calendars. Festivals and religious ceremonies were timed with agricultural cycles, blending the practical with the spiritual. In every grain of sand, in every ripple of the river, the Egyptians saw the hand of the gods shaping their destiny. This chapter of Egypt's story, the beginning of its civilization, lays the foundation for all that would come. From these humble origins along a life-giving river emerged a culture of astonishing achievements, of pyramids that would touch the sky, of kings and queens whose names still echo through the corridors of time.
The story of ancient Egypt truly begins to take shape during the early dynastic period, roughly between 3100 BCE and 2686 BCE. This was the era when the seeds of pharaonic power, religious devotion, and cultural identity were firmly planted. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt under a single ruler marked a turning point in history. And from this unification, the concept of kingship as both a political and divine institution emerged. King Narmer, often identified with Menes, is believed to have been the first pharaoh to unite the two lands. His reign established the blueprint for the centuries to come. Egypt would be ruled by a single sovereign, regarded not just as a political leader, but as a divine figure, chosen by the gods to maintain harmony, known as Ma'at, between heaven and earth, between life and death, and between the people and the cosmos. Ma'at was the principle of truth, balance, and justice, and the pharaoh's foremost duty was to uphold it. During this period, the Egyptians began constructing monumental tombs, precursors to the famous pyramids of the Old Kingdom. Early mastabas, rectangular, flat-roofed tombs made of mud brick, were built to honor the deceased pharaohs and ensure their safe journey to the afterlife. Burial practices became increasingly elaborate, reflecting the growing importance of religion in governance and daily life. Egyptians believed that the afterlife was a continuation of this world, a mirror image where the soul could live eternally, but only if properly prepared through rituals, offerings, and inscriptions that preserved the pharaoh's memory. Writing, which had begun in proto-hieroglyphic form, flourished during this time. Scribes, the elite record keepers, held prestigious positions in society. They documented royal decrees, religious texts, and trade records, ensuring that knowledge was preserved and transmitted across generations. Hieroglyphs adorned tomb walls, temples, and ceremonial objects, becoming a language not only of communication, but of spiritual power. Every symbol carried meaning beyond the surface. It connected the earthly with the divine. The early dynastic period also saw the rise of major cities and administrative centers. Memphis, near the apex of the Nile Delta, became the capital under Narmer and his successors. It was both a political and religious hub, home to grand temples and bustling marketplaces. Farmers, artisans, and laborers contributed to a growing economy that relied heavily on agriculture, but also on trade with neighboring regions. Egypt traded gold, papyrus, linen, and grain for copper, cedar, and other precious resources, setting the stage for the prosperity of future dynasties. Religion became increasingly structured during this time. Egyptians worshipped a pantheon of gods, each with specific roles and powers. Ra, the sun god, symbolized creation and life. Osiris, god of the afterlife, death, and resurrection, became central to the religious imagination. Isis, Horus, and Seth formed a divine family whose stories explain not only the forces of nature, but the moral and ethical framework of society. Temples dedicated to these gods were more than places of worship. They were centers of learning, wealth, and political influence. Pharaohs themselves were both the spiritual and administrative heads of Egypt. They led armies into battle, oversaw irrigation projects, enforced laws, and presided over religious ceremonies. Their authority was absolute, yet they were expected to rule with fairness, guided by Ma'at. The image of the pharaoh as both human and divine became a defining feature of Egyptian culture, setting it apart from other civilizations of the ancient world. Daily life for ordinary Egyptians also began to take recognizable shape. Farmers tilled the fertile Nile banks, harvesting wheat and barley, while artisans honed their skills in pottery, jewelry, and metalwork. Trade networks connected villages and towns, spreading ideas, goods, and culture. Festivals and religious celebrations marked the passing of the seasons, blending community life with devotion to the gods. Music, dance, and storytelling flourished, preserving history, culture, and myths for future generations. Even at this early stage, the Egyptians demonstrated extraordinary ingenuity in technology and engineering. Irrigation systems were carefully constructed to control the Nile's waters. Roads, bridges, and canals facilitated trade and communication. Art and architecture, from intricately decorated tombs to ceremonial objects, showcase precision, skill, and a deep reverence for the sacred. Every creation was a reflection of the civilization's values, harmony, order, and an unshakable belief in the divine. The early dynastic period laid the essential groundwork for Egypt's golden age. It was a time when pharaohs became more than rulers. They became living symbols of cosmic order, when religion and governance intertwined, and when the foundations of art, writing, and culture were firmly established. From this era emerged the enduring traditions that would define Egypt for millennia: the divine pharaoh, the complex pantheon, the reverence for the afterlife, and the unparalleled achievements in architecture, art, and administration.
The Old Kingdom of Egypt, spanning approximately 2686 to 2181 BCE, is often celebrated as the Age of the Pyramids. It was a time of extraordinary achievements in architecture, art, and governance, a period when Egypt reached a remarkable level of political stability and cultural sophistication. The pharaohs of the Old Kingdom wielded immense power, and their ambition to reach the heavens led to the construction of monumental pyramids that still inspire awe today. At the heart of this era was the belief in the pharaoh as both king and god. The pharaoh was the living embodiment of Horus, the falcon god of kingship, and was responsible for maintaining Ma'at, the divine order of the universe. This spiritual authority justified vast construction projects, military campaigns, and centralized administration. Every action of the pharaoh, from the allocation of grain to the commissioning of temples, reinforced the idea that the ruler was chosen by the gods and essential to the prosperity of the land. The most iconic achievement of the Old Kingdom is, of course, the Pyramids of Giza. The Great Pyramid, built for Pharaoh Khufu, also known as Cheops, stands as a testament to human ingenuity and ambition. Constructed with over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing several tons, the pyramid was designed not merely as a tomb, but as a bridge between the earthly and the divine. The precision of its alignment with the cardinal points, the sophistication of its internal chambers, and the sheer scale of the structure reflect an extraordinary understanding of engineering, mathematics, and astronomy. Khufu was preceded by Pharaoh Djoser, who commissioned the step pyramid at Saqqara, designed by the visionary architect Imhotep. This pyramid marked a revolutionary departure from earlier mastabas, rising in successive steps to symbolize the pharaoh's ascent to the heavens. Imhotep himself became revered as a god of wisdom and medicine, illustrating how intellectual achievement and religious devotion were intertwined in Egyptian culture. The Old Kingdom also witnessed the rise of a complex bureaucratic system. The pharaoh relied on a network of officials, scribes, and governors known as nomarchs to manage the provinces, collect taxes, oversee irrigation projects, and organize labor for monumental construction. This administrative sophistication allowed Egypt to maintain stability and control over its vast territory, ensuring that resources from the fertile Nile Valley were efficiently distributed and that the pharaoh's authority was upheld across the land. Religion and daily life were closely intertwined. Egyptians believed that death was not the end, but a transformation. Elaborate burial rituals, tomb decorations, and funerary texts, such as the pyramid texts, ensured that the pharaoh's spirit would join the gods in the afterlife. These inscriptions, often carved into pyramid walls, contained prayers, spells, and guidance to help the deceased navigate the challenges of the next world. Even common citizens participated in religious rituals, honoring gods who governed the forces of nature, fertility, and destiny. Art during the Old Kingdom flourished in a style that emphasized order, balance, and symbolism. Sculptors and painters adhered to strict conventions, producing statues of pharaohs and gods that radiated power and serenity. Reliefs depicted agricultural scenes, religious ceremonies, and daily life, offering a window into a society that valued harmony, precision, and the eternal cycle of life. Jewelry, pottery, and intricate carvings reflected both aesthetic sensibilities and the spiritual significance of craftsmanship. One of the most striking aspects of the Old Kingdom was its ambitious architectural projects beyond the pyramids. Temples,
Causeways and mortuary complexes were constructed to honor gods and pharaohs alike. These complexes often featured grand courtyards, ceremonial halls, and chapels, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of space, ritual, and symbolism. Every stone and column was carefully positioned to reflect cosmic principles and religious beliefs. Despite this grandeur, the Old Kingdom was not without challenges. Centralized power relied heavily on the pharaoh's ability to maintain authority and organize labor. When resources were mismanaged or the Nile failed to flood adequately, famine and unrest could threaten stability. Nevertheless, the Old Kingdom set the cultural and architectural standard that would influence Egypt for millennia, leaving behind a legacy that continues to fascinate historians, archaeologists, and the general public alike. The achievements of the Old Kingdom extended beyond monuments. Agricultural innovation, including sophisticated irrigation techniques, ensured the sustenance of a growing population. Trade expanded, bringing copper, cedar, and luxury goods from neighboring regions. The administrative, religious, and artistic foundations established during this period created a template for subsequent dynasties, demonstrating the remarkable vision and organizational skill of early Egyptian civilization. As the Old Kingdom flourished, the seeds of future challenges were quietly being sown. The dependence on a strong central authority and the monumental labor demands would in time contribute to political strain and economic difficulty. But for now, the age of pyramids stood as a symbol of human ambition, divine devotion, and the enduring power of Egyptian culture.
The end of the Old Kingdom, around 2181 BCE, marked the beginning of the First Intermediate Period, a dramatic shift in Egypt's long and storied history. Where once the pharaohs held absolute authority and monumental pyramids pierced the sky, now the land faced political fragmentation, social unrest, and economic strain. For the first time in centuries, Egypt was not a unified kingdom, but a patchwork of competing regions, each ruled by local leaders striving for power. The reasons for this upheaval were multifaceted. The immense resources required to build pyramids and maintain a centralized government strained the economy. Prolonged low Nile floods led to poor harvests, famine, and discontent among the population. As authority weakened, provincial governors, or nomarchs, began asserting more independence, controlling taxation, trade, and local armies. The pharaoh's influence dwindled, and the once stable hierarchy of the Old Kingdom began to crumble. Despite the political chaos, Egyptian culture endured. Local rulers continued religious practices, built temples, and commissioned artwork, preserving traditions established during the Old Kingdom. Religion remained a unifying force. Gods like Osiris, Ra, and Hathor maintained their central role in daily life, while funerary practices ensured the continuity of belief in the afterlife. Even in times of uncertainty, the Egyptians' devotion to Ma'at, the principle of cosmic order, remained a guiding ideal, though it often contrasted sharply with the fractured reality of their society. The First Intermediate Period was also a time of literary and artistic innovation. With centralized control weakened, local scribes gained prominence, producing texts that expressed personal reflection, moral instruction, and social commentary. Poetry and wisdom literature flourished, revealing the concerns and values of ordinary Egyptians as they navigated hardship. These works provide modern historians with an intimate glimpse into life during a time of instability, showing how resilience and creativity thrived even in the absence of strong central power. Regional rivalries defined much of this period. Upper and Lower Egypt were often ruled by separate dynasties, each claiming legitimacy and divine authority. Conflicts between these regions sometimes erupted into warfare, but they also fostered innovation in administration and governance. Local leaders developed sophisticated systems to manage resources, maintain armies, and cultivate loyalty, ensuring their regions survived despite broader political instability. The economy adapted as well. Agricultural production became more localized, with communities relying on irrigation and communal labor to sustain themselves. Trade continued, though on a smaller scale, and artisans found opportunities to craft goods for local elites rather than the pharaoh. This decentralization, while born of necessity, ultimately strengthened regional identities and preserved cultural continuity, setting the stage for the eventual reunification of Egypt. One of the remarkable aspects of this period was the endurance of monumental arts and architecture, even in the absence of a powerful central authority. Local rulers continued building tombs, chapels, and temples, often incorporating innovative designs and regional styles. These projects were smaller in scale than the Grand Pyramids, but they reflected both a commitment to religious devotion and the assertion of local power. Through these constructions, the people of Egypt demonstrated that cultural achievement could survive political fragmentation. The First Intermediate Period also highlighted the role of individuals in shaping history. Scribes, priests, and regional leaders played increasingly important roles in their communities, asserting influence through writing, religious guidance, and administration. Their contributions ensured that knowledge, religious practice, and cultural norms were transmitted across generations, preserving the essence of Egyptian civilization even in times of upheaval. Despite the challenges, the First Intermediate Period laid important foundations for the future. Lessons learned during this time of decentralization informed the governance and administration of the Middle Kingdom, which would reunite Egypt and usher in a new era of stability, prosperity, and artistic achievement. The struggles of this period demonstrated the resilience of the Egyptian people and their culture, proving that even in the face of political turmoil, a civilization's identity and creativity could endure. The First Intermediate Period, therefore, is not merely a time of decline, it is a story of adaptation, survival, and transformation. It shows that Egypt's greatness was not solely dependent on monumental architecture or strong pharaohs, but also on the enduring spirit of its people, the strength of its cultural traditions, and the unbreakable bond between the Egyptians and their sacred Nile.
After nearly a century of political fragmentation during the First Intermediate Period, Egypt entered a new era of stability and prosperity known as the Middle Kingdom, roughly spanning 2055 to 1650 BCE. This period is often regarded as a renaissance in Egyptian history, marked by the reunification of Upper and Lower Egypt, the consolidation of central authority, and the flourishing of culture, art, and literature. The reunification was achieved by Pharaoh Mentuhotep II of Thebes, who defeated rival rulers and restored centralized power. His reign signaled the start of the 11th dynasty and the consolidation of political and religious authority. Mentuhotep II moved the capital to Thebes, emphasizing the importance of Upper Egypt while maintaining connections with Lower Egypt. His leadership demonstrated that effective governance required not only military skill, but also political acumen, religious legitimacy, and the ability to inspire loyalty among both nobles and common citizens. Religion continued to play a central role in society. Pharaohs were considered divine mediators between the gods and the people, and the emphasis on ma'at, harmony, balance, and justice, remained paramount. Temples and religious complexes were rebuilt or expanded, and new deities gained prominence. One notable example is Amun, a god who rose to become a principal deity, reflecting the growing influence of Thebes as a religious center. Temples were not only places of worship, but also centers of economic activity, administration, and education, reinforcing the pharaoh's role as both spiritual and political leader. The Middle Kingdom was also a golden age for literature and intellectual life. Scribes produced an impressive array of works, from instructional texts and wisdom literature to poetry and tales of adventure. Among the most famous is the story of Sinuhe, a narrative that combines political intrigue, personal journey, and moral reflection, illustrating both the sophistication of Egyptian storytelling and the universal themes of loyalty, exile, and destiny. Literature became a medium through which Egyptians explored questions of ethics, duty, and human nature, revealing the richness of their intellectual life. Art and architecture flourished alongside literature. Pharaohs and nobles commissioned statues, reliefs, and funerary objects that displayed technical skill, elegance, and symbolic meaning. Architectural projects included not only temples and tombs, but also fortifications, canals, and irrigation systems. These projects reflected the Middle Kingdom's emphasis on practical governance, economic stability, and monumental expression of royal power. Unlike the monumental pyramids of the Old Kingdom, Middle Kingdom tombs were often cut into rock, decorated with intricate reliefs and inscriptions that guided the deceased into the afterlife. Agriculture remained the backbone of the economy. Advances in irrigation, water management, and cultivation techniques allowed the Nile's bounty to support a growing population. Farmers produced surplus crops which were stored in state granaries, taxed by the government, and used to support large-scale construction projects and trade expeditions. Trade networks expanded both within Egypt and abroad, reaching as far as Nubia, the Levant, and the Red Sea. Egypt exported gold, copper, linen, and grain, while importing exotic goods such as incense, cedar, and luxury items, strengthening both its economy and its cultural influence. Military organization also advanced during the Middle Kingdom. While the period is often noted for internal stability and cultural achievements, pharaohs maintained strong armies to defend borders, suppress rebellions, and secure trade routes. The state relied on a combination of professional soldiers and conscripted laborers, demonstrating an effective balance between centralized authority and local governance. Strategic fortresses were built in Nubia and along the eastern deserts to protect against external threats, ensuring the security of Egypt's resources and population. Social life during the Middle Kingdom reflected a more inclusive approach to governance. Pharaohs sought to connect with ordinary Egyptians, emphasizing justice and fair treatment under the law. Officials were held accountable, and inscriptions reveal a concern for ethical conduct, community welfare, and public order. While the elite continued to enjoy privileges, the administration increasingly recognized the importance of ordinary citizens in sustaining the state. The Middle Kingdom also saw innovation in technology and crafts. Artisans refined metalworking techniques, creating tools, weapons, and decorative items of exceptional quality. Pottery and ceramics became more sophisticated, while stone carving reached new levels of precision. These advancements not only served practical purposes, but also reinforced the cultural and religious ideals of order, beauty, and permanence. This period of reunification and cultural revival set the stage for Egypt's next great chapter, the Second Intermediate Period, when foreign powers, including the Hyksos, would challenge Egyptian sovereignty, introducing new technologies and ideas that would ultimately transform the civilization.
Following the prosperity of the Middle Kingdom, Egypt once again faced political fragmentation around 1650 BCE, marking the beginning of the Second Intermediate Period. This era is defined by regional division, foreign invasion, and profound cultural transformation. It was during this time that a foreign people known as the Hyksos rose to power in Lower Egypt, leaving an indelible mark on Egyptian history. The term Hyksos comes from the Egyptian expression meaning rulers of foreign lands. They were likely of Semitic origin, arriving from the Levant, bringing with them new technologies, military strategies, and cultural practices that would challenge and ultimately enrich Egyptian society. The Hyksos established their capital at Avaris in the Nile Delta, ruling much of Lower Egypt, while native Egyptian dynasties continued to govern Upper Egypt from Thebes. This division created a tense but dynamic political landscape, where two distinct centers of power coexisted, sometimes in conflict, sometimes in uneasy balance. The Hyksos introduced several innovations that transformed Egyptian military and material culture. Among the most significant was the horse-drawn chariot, which allowed for unprecedented mobility and battlefield tactics. They also brought new weapons, including composite bows and improved bronze tools, which gave them a technological advantage over traditional Egyptian forces. These innovations would eventually be adopted by the Egyptians, becoming integral to the military successes of later dynasties. Despite their foreign origins, the Hyksos adopted many elements of Egyptian governance and religion to legitimize their rule. They took on Egyptian titles, built temples, and honored Egyptian gods alongside their own deities. This syncretism demonstrates the adaptability of Egyptian culture and its capacity to absorb and integrate outside influences, enriching rather than erasing the civilization's traditions. The Second Intermediate Period was also marked by political struggle. Native Egyptian rulers in Upper Egypt, centered at Thebes, resisted Hyksos dominance. Over decades, these tensions fueled a series of military campaigns, alliances, and strategic maneuvering. Leaders such as Kamose and Ahmose I emerged as national heroes, unifying Upper Egypt and ultimately launching a successful campaign to expel the Hyksos. Ahmose I's victory around 1550 BCE marked the end of the Second Intermediate Period and the beginning of the New Kingdom, Egypt's most powerful and expansive era. Beyond military and political developments, this period had a profound impact on Egyptian society and culture. Exposure to Hyksos technologies, trade networks, and cultural practices introduced new ideas, tools, and goods into Egyptian life. Craftsmen learned new techniques in bronzeworking, weaponry, and construction. Trade expanded, bringing exotic materials such as cedar from Lebanon, lapis lazuli from Afghanistan, and gold from Nubia. Even during a time of division and foreign dominance, Egyptian society was absorbing knowledge that would strengthen and diversify its civilization in the centuries to come. Religion continued to provide continuity amidst political upheaval. Temples remained centers of worship, administration, and learning, while Egyptian gods maintained their central place in society. The Egyptians' belief in Ma'at, the principle of order, justice, and cosmic balance, remained unshaken, guiding both the ruling dynasties and the populace through uncertain times. Rituals, festivals, and funerary practices persisted, ensuring the spiritual life of the nation remained vibrant despite foreign influence. The Second Intermediate Period also offers insight into the resilience of Egyptian identity. While the Hyksos controlled significant portions of the land, Egyptian culture, language, and religious practice continued unabated in Upper Egypt. Local rulers nurtured native traditions, trained scribes, and commissioned works of art that reflected Egyptian values. This duality, foreign rule in the north and cultural continuity in the south, highlighted Egypt's remarkable ability to maintain its identity even under external pressures. The expulsion of the Hyksos and the reunification of Egypt under Ahmose I marked a turning point. It demonstrated the Egyptians' capacity to learn from adversity, adopt new innovations, and ultimately emerge stronger. The lessons of the Second Intermediate Period, adaptation, technological adoption, and political resilience, would prove crucial as Egypt entered the New Kingdom, an era of unparalleled power, wealth, and international influence. The Second Intermediate Period, therefore, is more than a time of invasion and turmoil. It is a story of transformation, where foreign influence spurred technological and cultural growth, regional resilience preserved national identity, and the stage was set for Egypt to rise again as one of the most powerful civilizations of the ancient world. The New Kingdom, spanning roughly 1550 to 1070 BCE, is often considered the golden age of ancient Egypt, a period of unparalleled power, wealth, and cultural achievement. Following the expulsion of the Hyksos, Egypt emerged stronger, more unified, and more ambitious than ever. Its pharaohs expanded their borders through military conquest, consolidated power through centralized administration, and commissioned monumental works that would endure for millennia. At the forefront of this era were remarkable pharaohs whose names echo through history. Hatshepsut, one of Egypt's few female rulers, reigned with wisdom and vision. She consolidated power peacefully, commissioned grand building projects, and established trade networks, including the famous expedition to Punt, bringing wealth, exotic goods, and prestige to Egypt. Her mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, perched against the cliffs of the Theban mountains, stands as a testament to architectural innovation, artistry, and her enduring legacy. Following Hatshepsut came Thutmose III, often called the Napoleon of Egypt. A military genius, he expanded Egypt's borders to their greatest extent, reaching deep into Nubia, the Levant, and Syria.
His campaigns secured Egypt's dominance, ensured tribute from conquered lands, and enriched the empire with gold, precious stones, and other valuable resources. Thutmose III also maintained domestic stability, building temples, monuments, and infrastructure that strengthened the state and reinforced his authority as a god king. Another notable figure is Amenhotep III, whose reign was marked by prosperity, diplomatic engagement, and cultural flourishing. Large-scale building projects, including temples and statues, demonstrated both religious devotion and the power of the pharaoh. Amenhotep III's court was a center of art, literature, and international diplomacy, reflecting Egypt's elevated status among contemporary civilizations. Perhaps the most controversial and fascinating pharaoh of the New Kingdom is Akhenaten, who introduced dramatic religious reform by promoting the worship of a single deity, the sun disk Aten. Moving the capital to Akhenaten, modern-day Amarna, Akhenaten attempted to redefine the spiritual landscape of Egypt. While his reforms were reversed after his death, they represent a remarkable period of experimentation and highlight the dynamic nature of Egyptian religion and governance. The New Kingdom also produced the boy king Tutankhamun, whose tomb, discovered in 1922 by Howard Carter, remains one of the most significant archaeological finds in history. Though Tutankhamun's reign was brief, the treasures of his tomb, including gold, jewelry, and ceremonial objects, provide a vivid glimpse into the opulence, artistry, and religious practices of the era. Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great, exemplified the power and longevity of New Kingdom Egypt. He led campaigns against the Hittites, most famously at the Battle of Kadesh, and left a legacy of monumental architecture, including the temples at Abu Simbel and his mortuary temple, the Ramesseum. His reign symbolized the apex of Egypt's political, military, and cultural power. The New Kingdom was a time of military innovation. The Egyptians maintained well-trained armies, equipped with chariots, composite bows, and bronze weapons. Fortresses, garrisons, and strategic outposts protected the borders, ensuring stability and enabling expansion. Trade networks extended from the Nile Valley to Nubia, the Levant, and the Red Sea, bringing exotic goods, raw materials, and cultural exchange that enriched Egyptian life. Religion continued to be central to New Kingdom society. Pharaohs were divine rulers, mediators between gods and humans. Temples were constructed on unprecedented scale, such as Karnak and Luxor, adorned with statues, reliefs, and inscriptions praising the gods and the pharaoh. Priests wielded considerable influence, managing temple wealth, ceremonies, and education, while priests ensured the continuity of cosmic order. Daily life for ordinary Egyptians was vibrant. Farmers worked the Nile, craftsmen honed skills in pottery, jewelry, and metalwork, and markets buzzed with activity. Music, dance, and storytelling flourished, reflecting both leisure and religious devotion. Education expanded, particularly for scribes who recorded everything from religious texts to economic transactions, ensuring continuity of knowledge across generations. Art and architecture reached extraordinary heights. Temples, tombs, and monuments were not only expressions of religious devotion, but also powerful symbols of the pharaoh's authority. Wall reliefs depicted military victories, religious ceremonies, and daily life with intricate detail. Statues portrayed rulers with idealized forms, conveying strength, divinity, and eternal presence. The New Kingdom also saw exploration and trade. Egyptian expeditions ventured to Punt for incense, myrrh, and exotic animals, to Nubia for gold, ebony, and ivory, and into the Levant for timber and metals. These interactions brought wealth, cultural exchange, and diplomatic alliances, reinforcing Egypt's status as a dominant regional power. Despite its grandeur, the New Kingdom was not immune to challenges. Succession disputes, economic strain, and foreign pressures eventually weakened central authority. By the end of the 20th dynasty, Egypt faced decline, leading to periods of instability that would define the later eras. Yet the achievements of this golden age, its monumental architecture, military conquests, cultural richness, and religious innovation, remain the most celebrated chapter of ancient Egyptian history. The New Kingdom stands as a testament to human ambition, creativity, and resilience. Its pharaohs, temples, art, and literature continue to inspire wonder, revealing a civilization at the height of its power, capable of shaping history, culture, and imagination for millennia to come.
While pharaohs and monumental architecture dominate the story of ancient Egypt, the lives of ordinary Egyptians were equally vital in sustaining this remarkable civilization. Daily life revolved around the Nile River, whose predictable floods determined the rhythm of work, leisure, and ritual. The Nile was not merely a river, it was a highway, a food source, a sacred presence, and the lifeblood of Egyptian society. Agriculture formed the backbone of daily existence. Farmers planted wheat, barley, flax, and vegetables along the fertile banks of the Nile. Labor was organized communally, with families working together to plow, sow, and harvest crops. Oxen and wooden plows aided their efforts, and irrigation channels were meticulously maintained to ensure maximum fertility. Surplus crops were stored in granaries, which were vital for feeding both the population and the labor force that built temples, pyramids, and monuments. Food and drink were simple but nutritious. Bread, often made from emmer wheat, was a staple, accompanied by vegetables, legumes, onions, and occasionally fish from the Nile. Meat, such as beef, goat, or poultry, was reserved for the wealthy or for special occasions. Beer, made from fermented barley, was the common beverage, both nourishing and central to social and religious life. Meals were often communal, reinforcing family bonds and community ties. Family life was structured but affectionate. Households were typically multi-generational, with grandparents, parents, and children living together. Men worked in the fields or in skilled trades, while women managed the household, cared for children, prepared food, and contributed to crafts such as weaving and pottery. Education was practical for most children, focusing on agricultural skills or family trades, while sons of scribes or nobles received formal instruction in reading, writing, and mathematics. Housing varied depending on social status. Common homes were modest, made of mud brick with flat roofs and small courtyards. Wealthier families enjoyed larger houses with multiple rooms, decorative plaster walls, and furniture. Despite simplicity, homes were centers of comfort, community, and daily ritual. Families decorated their houses with symbols of protection, such as amulets and painted depictions of gods. Work and crafts were diverse. Artisans and craftsmen specialized in pottery, weaving, metalwork, jewelry, and stone carving. Their creations were used locally or supplied to temples, palaces, and trade expeditions. Scribes held prestigious positions, recording economic transactions, religious texts, and administrative decrees. Laborers, often organized by the state, participated in large-scale construction projects, including pyramid building and temple renovations, connecting their work directly to the glory of the pharaoh and the gods. Religion permeated daily life. Egyptians believed that gods controlled every aspect of existence, from the flooding of the Nile to personal health. Households maintained small shrines, offering food, incense, and prayers to household gods. Festivals, celebrated throughout the year, combined music, dance, ritual, and feasting. Major celebrations such as the Opet Festival in Thebes or the Wepet Renpet New Year Festival brought entire communities together, reinforcing cultural identity, social cohesion, and devotion to the divine. Clothing and personal appearance were practical and symbolic. Linen garments kept people cool in the hot climate, while jewelry and cosmetics reflected both social status and religious protection. Men typically wore simple kilts, while women wore long dresses with straps. Both sexes used cosmetics made from malachite, coal, and ochre, not only for beauty but also for spiritual and protective purposes. Hairstyles varied, with men shaving their heads and wearing wigs, and women styling braids or adorned hairpieces.
Medicine and healthcare combined empirical practice with spiritual belief. Physicians treated wounds, fractures, and illnesses using herbs, ointments, and bandaging techniques, while religious rituals and prayers sought divine intervention. Magical amulets, charms, and incantations were common remedies, reflecting the Egyptians' understanding that health was influenced by both natural and supernatural forces. Entertainment and leisure included music, dance, games, and storytelling. Harps, flutes, and percussion instruments provided musical accompaniment for ceremonies, festivals, and personal enjoyment. Board games like Senet offered both amusement and symbolic representation of life's journey. Storytelling, often passed orally, preserved myths, legends, and historical narratives, educating and entertaining listeners across generations. The lives of ordinary Egyptians were deeply intertwined with the grandeur of the pharaohs, the temples, and the monuments. Farmers, artisans, scribes, and laborers collectively sustained the civilization, ensuring that the Nile continued to flow, the temples remained active, and the legacy of Egypt endured. Their work, devotion, and daily rituals, though less visible than pyramids or royal decrees, were the foundation upon which one of history's greatest civilizations thrived.
Ancient Egypt is perhaps best remembered for its art, architecture, and writing, elements that conveyed not only beauty but also meaning, power, and spiritual significance. These creative achievements were integral to daily life, governance, and religion, reflecting the Egyptians' worldview, values, and technological ingenuity. Art in ancient Egypt was highly symbolic, emphasizing order, harmony, and idealized representation rather than mere realism. Statues, reliefs, and paintings followed strict conventions. Pharaohs were depicted as larger-than-life figures, exuding power, youth, and divine authority, while ordinary people appeared smaller, engaged in labor or ritual. Color was symbolic. Green represented fertility and rebirth. Blue reflected the heavens and the Nile, and red conveyed life and vitality. Reliefs on temple walls and tombs told stories of battles won, religious ceremonies performed, and the journey of the soul in the afterlife. Funerary art was especially significant. Tombs were adorned with images of gods, daily life, and offerings, ensuring that the deceased would be sustained in the afterlife. Every line, posture, and symbol was carefully chosen to serve both spiritual and aesthetic purposes. Architecture in Egypt is legendary, from the earliest mastabas to the monumental pyramids and colossal temples. The pyramids, built during the Old Kingdom, were engineering marvels, aligning precisely with celestial bodies and demonstrating unparalleled knowledge of mathematics and geometry. Temples, particularly during the New Kingdom, became centers of religion, education, and administration. Complexes like Karnak, Luxor, and Abu Simbel were adorned with towering obelisks, massive statues, and intricate carvings, creating spaces that impressed both mortals and gods. Temples were more than worship spaces. They were living communities. Priests maintained rituals, stored valuable goods, and managed agricultural estates. Construction often involved thousands of laborers, artisans, and engineers, illustrating Egypt's capacity for large-scale organization and technical precision. Architectural innovations included hypostyle halls with massive columns, stone ceilings carved with astronomical motifs, and precise alignment of structures with the rising sun or sacred stars. Writing, the third pillar of Egyptian creativity, began with hieroglyphics, pictorial symbols representing objects, sounds, and ideas. Hieroglyphics were used for religious texts, royal decrees, monumental inscriptions, and literature. Scribes held elite status, as literacy was rare and their skill essential for administration, record-keeping, and cultural preservation. Hieroglyphs combined visual beauty with intellectual depth, making writing both functional and artistic. In addition to hieroglyphs, Egyptians developed hieratic and later demotic scripts for daily use. These simplified forms allowed quicker writing on papyrus, clay, or ostraka, pottery shards. Literature flourished, encompassing religious texts, wisdom literature, poetry, stories, and historical chronicles. Works like the Instruction of Ptahhotep offered moral guidance, while tales such as the Story of Sinuhe blended adventure, morality, and reflection on destiny, demonstrating the Egyptians' literary sophistication. Monuments and statues were carefully planned to convey permanence. Colossal statues of pharaohs, such as those of Ramses II at Abu Simbel, symbolized authority and divine presence. Temples were decorated with intricate carvings depicting gods, celestial bodies, and daily life. Even small objects, amulets, jewelry, and pottery were designed with attention to detail, often carrying spiritual or symbolic significance. Egyptian craftsmanship extended to jewelry, glass, metalwork, and ceramics. Artisans used gold, copper, and bronze to create intricate items, often decorated with semi-precious stones. Ceramics and pottery, both functional and decorative, were essential in daily life, trade, and burial rituals. The quality of craftsmanship reflected not only aesthetic skill, but also the Egyptians' understanding of symbolism, proportion, and harmony. Even the landscape itself became a canvas. Temples and tombs were designed to interact with sunlight, shadows, and seasonal changes. Obelisks aligned with the sun's rays, statues were positioned to catch light dramatically, and reliefs depicted agricultural cycles tied to the Nile. Architecture, art, and writing were interconnected, forming a visual language that communicated political power, religious devotion, and cultural identity. The creative achievements of ancient Egypt were more than expressions of beauty. They were tools of governance, religion, and legacy. Through art, architecture, and writing, Egyptians communicated their understanding of life, death, and the divine. These accomplishments ensured that the civilization's memory endured long after the pharaohs and common people had passed, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire awe, study, and imagination today.
After thousands of years of remarkable achievement, ancient Egypt eventually faced a series of challenges that eroded its power and independence. The decline was neither sudden nor absolute. It unfolded gradually, marked by political instability, economic strain, foreign invasions, and internal unrest. Yet, even as its political structures faltered, Egypt's cultural, religious, and artistic legacies continued to influence the world for centuries. The New Kingdom, Egypt's golden age, began to weaken toward the end of the 20th dynasty, around 1070 BCE. Overextended by military campaigns, costly building projects, and ambitious foreign expeditions, the state struggled to maintain centralized control. Pharaohs continued to rule, but their authority was increasingly challenged by powerful officials, provincial governors, and local elites, leading to fragmentation reminiscent of earlier intermediate periods. Economic strain compounded these political problems. Maintaining the army, paying officials, and supporting monumental construction required enormous resources. Agricultural shortfalls, often caused by irregular Nile floods, disrupted food production and trade. Social discontent grew as ordinary citizens struggled to meet their obligations to the state. Famine and unrest occasionally flared, highlighting the delicate balance between Egypt's prosperity and the natural rhythms of the Nile. Foreign invasions further weakened Egypt's dominance. Around 950 BCE, Egypt faced incursions from Libyan tribes and later from the Nubians in the south. Foreign powers took advantage of internal divisions, establishing control over strategic regions. By the first millennium BCE, Egypt had experienced a series of foreign rulers, including Assyrians and later Persians, each leaving their mark on governance and culture. Even under foreign domination, Egyptians preserved their language, religion, and artistic traditions, demonstrating remarkable resilience. Internal conflict and civil unrest also played a significant role. Succession disputes between rival factions led to instability, and provincial governors sometimes acted independently of the pharaoh. The breakdown of centralized authority made it difficult to coordinate large-scale projects or defend borders effectively, accelerating the decline. Despite these challenges, Egyptian culture remained vibrant, as temples, tombs, and artistic expression continued under both native and foreign rulers. Religious and cultural continuity was a hallmark of this period. Temples continued to operate, rituals were maintained, and the worship of traditional gods persisted. Egyptians remained deeply connected to the cycles of the Nile, the land, and the afterlife. Even as political power waned, the civilization's spiritual and cultural foundations endured, preserving knowledge, literature, and artistic traditions that would inspire future generations. The decline of Egypt was gradual and complex. It involved a combination of environmental pressures, economic challenges, political fragmentation, foreign invasion, and social change. Yet these difficulties did not erase Egypt's achievements. Its monumental architecture, sophisticated governance, artistic innovation, and religious philosophy remained influential, shaping neighboring civilizations and leaving a lasting imprint on human history. The story of Egypt's decline is also a story of adaptation. Even under foreign rule, Egyptian art, religion, and administration influenced invaders, blending traditions and creating hybrid cultures. Greek and Roman historians marveled at Egyptian monuments, learning from their engineering and administration. The civilization's legacy endured in temples, tombs, manuscripts, and cultural memory long after its political independence faded. As we reflect on the rise, peak, and decline of ancient Egypt, we see a civilization defined by ingenuity, resilience, and a profound connection to the natural and divine world. From the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, through the construction of pyramids, the cultural flourishing of the Middle and New Kingdoms, to the challenges of political fragmentation and foreign invasion, Egypt's story is a testament to human ambition, creativity, and endurance.
Even after the political power of ancient Egypt waned, its cultural, scientific, and artistic legacy endured, influencing civilizations across the Mediterranean, the Near East, and eventually the modern world. The story of Egypt is not just one of pharaohs, pyramids, and monuments. It is also a story of ideas, innovation, and enduring inspiration. One of the most visible legacies is architecture. The monumental structures of Egypt, pyramids, temples, obelisks, and statues, set new standards in engineering, aesthetics, and symbolic design. Greek and Roman architects drew inspiration from Egyptian forms, incorporating columns, obelisks, and monumental layouts into their own temples, tombs, and public spaces. The geometric precision, scale, and symbolism of Egyptian architecture continue to captivate engineers, historians, and tourists, representing the pinnacle of ancient innovation. Artistic inventions from Egypt also left a lasting imprint. The use of hierarchical scale, symbolic color, and carefully composed reliefs informed artistic traditions in neighboring regions. Even the Renaissance saw renewed interest in Egyptian motifs, with scholars and artists studying the principles of proportion, symmetry, and storytelling embedded in Egyptian art. Jewelry, pottery, sculpture, and decorative motifs inspired countless generations of artisans, reflecting the universality and timelessness of Egyptian creativity. The Egyptians' writing system, particularly hieroglyphics, was another cornerstone of influence. It provided a foundation for literacy, record-keeping, and the transmission of knowledge. Greek historians such as Herodotus marveled at Egyptian inscriptions, and later scholars worked tirelessly to decode their meanings, culminating in the discovery of the Rosetta Stone in 1799. This breakthrough allowed modern civilization to unlock thousands of years of history, literature, and scientific knowledge preserved in stone, papyrus, and tombs. Egyptian religion and mythology profoundly shaped later spiritual thought. Concepts of the afterlife, divine kingship, and moral order influenced Greek, Roman, and early Christian ideas. Myths of Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Ra inspired stories of resurrection, justice, and divine intervention. Themes echoed in diverse religious traditions across the ancient Mediterranean. Temples, rituals, and sacred festivals provided models for communal worship, civic participation, and spiritual expression. The Egyptians' advances in science and technology were equally impactful. Their knowledge of astronomy, mathematics, medicine, and engineering enabled the construction of pyramids, precise calendars, and sophisticated irrigation systems. They measured time, predicted Nile floods, and developed surgical techniques, herbal remedies, and anatomical understanding. Many of these innovations influenced Greek and Roman science, laying the groundwork for centuries of intellectual development. Egypt's enduring cultural influence is evident in the arts, literature, and popular imagination. From Renaissance paintings and sculptures to modern films, documentaries, and novels, Egypt continues to captivate minds worldwide. Pyramids, temples, and tombs inspire awe, while the stories of pharaohs, gods, and everyday people provide timeless narratives of ambition, devotion, and creativity. Museums around the world display Egyptian artifacts, allowing people to connect directly with a civilization that flourished thousands of years ago. Perhaps most importantly, Egypt's legacy teaches enduring lessons about resilience, adaptation, and human ambition. Despite invasions, political fragmentation, and environmental challenges, the civilization endured for millennia, leaving behind a wealth of knowledge, art, and culture. Its achievements remind us that human creativity, ingenuity, and determination can transcend time, influencing generations far beyond the original context. As we conclude our journey through ancient Egypt, we see a civilization that not only shaped its own era, but also left an indelible mark on world history. From the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt, through the construction of pyramids, the literary and artistic flourishing of the Middle and New Kingdoms, to the complex interactions with foreign powers, ancient Egypt's story is one of human ambition, harmonized with nature, faith, and innovation. Today, the echoes of ancient Egypt resonate in every corner of the globe, from academic scholarship and historical research to art, architecture, and popular culture. The civilization's enduring legacy is a testament to the power of human achievement and to the profound ways in which one society can inspire countless others across space and time. As we conclude our journey through ancient Egypt, we are reminded that the Nile was not just a river, but a lifeline of culture, innovation, and spiritual connection. The pharaohs, artisans, scribes, farmers, and laborers of the civilization collectively created a world that continues to inspire wonder, study, and imagination thousands of years after its greatest monuments were first raised to the sun and sky.
If you enjoyed this video and are still not subscribed, please consider it, as it really helps me out a lot. Thank you.